Now we are starting the next chapter, and that is urinary system. This lecture is about anatomy and histology of the urinary system. It's very important for you to carefully listen and try to understand anatomy and histology of the urinary system to be able to understand the physiology of this system later on. Urinary system is the system that is responsible for excretion of metabolic waste from our body. This system consists of a number of organs, including a pair of kidneys, a pair of duct-like structures called as ureters, urinary bladder, which is a sac-like structure in which urine is stored till it is passed out of the urinary bladder through a duct or tubular structure called as urethra. The organs of urinary system, especially kidneys, are present along the posterior abdominal wall. Right kidney is a little lower than left kidney because of the presence of liver above the right kidney, which has displaced right kidney slightly lower than the left kidney. Along medial side of each kidney there is a depression that is called as hilum. Hilum is gateway to the kidney because through this depression renal artery enters the kidney and renal vein leaves the kidney. And ureter is also connected with each kidney through hilum. Urine produced by each kidney is collected in a central cavity called as renal pelvis, through which then urine is drained into the ureter and it is taken through the ureter into the urinary bladder, where it kept stored until it is passed out through urethra. Now we'll discuss about structure of the kidneys. Each adult human kidney is 160 gram in weight, and size of the kidney of a person is that of his or her clenched fist. So if you clench your fist, this is actually the size of your kidney. Each kidney is having an outer layer of tough fibrous connective tissue, which is called as renal capsule. Inside the renal capsule there is mass of kidney called as renal parenchyma. The kidney mass is divided in two regions, an outer region or renal cortex and an inner region or renal medulla. Renal cortex is granular and reddish brown in color. Its granular appearance is because of the presence of renal corpuscles that are having glomerular capillaries, a tuft of glomerular capillaries surrounded by the Bowman's capsule, which is giving it the granular appearance. Renal medulla is lying inner to the renal cortex and it is divided in 8 to 15 triangular structures that are called as renal pyramids. Renal pyramids are having striated appearance. The striated appearance of renal pyramids is because of the parallel running renal tubules. These triangular structures or renal pyramids are separated by a tissue which is same as the tissue of renal cortex. and these the tissues which are separating renal pyramids are called as renal columns. So this is a renal column, which is actually a tissue of renal cortex radiating into the renal medulla and thus dividing it into 8 to 15 triangular structures or renal pyramids. Each human kidney, the length of each kidney is 11 centimeter and its width is 5 to 7 centimeter. The kidney is having an indentation or depression on its medial side, which is called as hilum. Hilum is the region where renal artery is entering the kidney and renal vein is leaving the kidney. And this is also the region where ureter is attached with the kidney. Now, in addition to the renal cortex and renal medulla, there are also other structures inside the kidney. And these structures include minor calyx, major calyx, renal and renal pelvis. Minor calyx is a cup-shaped structure which is receiving urine produced by each renal pyramid. So the urine which is produced by one renal pyramid is collected into one minor calyx, which is a cup-shaped structure. Now numerous minor calyces join each other and open into a major calyx. Then numerous major calyces join each other to form a funnel-shaped structure called as renal pelvis. And then urine from renal pelvis is drained into the ureter. This diagram is showing you one renal pyramid surrounded by a part of renal cortex. These are the nephrons which are arranged inside the kidney or the renal tissue, and you can see that their collecting ducts are opening into the minor calyx, and then from minor calyx the urine drains into the major calyx and then renal pelvis. Okay, this slide gives an overview of renal blood flow. Both the kidneys in terms of weight are constituting only 0.4% of the total body weight. However, a huge amount of blood circulates through the kidneys each minute, and this is 22% of the total blood pumped by heart in 1 minute. So, and this is called as cardiac output. The cardiac output is the volume of blood pumped by heart each minute, and out of the total cardiac output, 22% goes to the kidneys, and this amount of blood is much more than the proportion of kidneys in terms of weight. This huge blood supply to the kidneys is meant for the rapid elimination of metabolic waste from the blood. Blood is supplied to the kidneys through renal artery. Renal artery enters the mass of kidney through hilum, which is an indentation on medial side of the kidney. On entering the kidney mass, renal artery divides in a few branches that are called as segmental arteries. Then each of these segmental arteries further divide into interlobar arteries. This is an interlobar artery which extends through the renal column and reaches the corticomedullary junction. That is the boundary between cortex and renal medulla. At corticomedullary junction, interlobar artery further divides into arcuate artery. So this is an arcuate artery which runs parallel to the corticomedullary junction. Then each of these arcuate arteries gives off several branches that are called as interlobular arteries. These interlobular arteries penetrate into the renal cortex and give off efferent arterioles. The efferent arterioles then further divides and form a tuft of capillaries called as glomeruli. Then from glomeruli, blood drains into the efferent arterioles, and then efferent arterioles further divide into a second network of capillaries which is called as peritubular capillaries. The peritubular capillaries surround renal tubules. Then from peritubular capillaries, the blood is drained into the vein, which is interlobular vein. This vein is running parallel to the interlobular artery. Then from interlobular vein, blood drains into arcuate vein, which is running parallel to the arcuate artery. Then from arcuate vein, it enters into the interlobar vein. Then it goes into the segmental vein and then renal vein. And then it is finally returned back to the heart. So this diagram shows that how this circulation of blood through the kidneys is completed. So whatever the blood is pumped by heart is cardiac output. This blood enters into the aorta and aorta gives off a branch called as renal artery, which is responsible to carry blood to the kidneys. From renal artery upon entering into the kidney divides into segmental artery. Segmental arteries then give branches called as interlobar arteries, which extend through the renal column and reach the corticomedullary junction and give off branches called as arcuate arteries. The arcuate arteries then give branches called as interlobular arteries, or they are also called as cortical radiate arteries. Then from interlobular arteries, they further divide into efferent arterioles. Efferent arterioles then divide into the capillaries called as glomerulus. Then from these capillaries or glomeruli, the blood is drained into efferent arterioles. Then these efferent arterioles divide and give off a second capillary network that is called as peritubular capillaries or the vasa recta. Okay, vasa recta are also the peritubular capillaries, but these are straight capillaries. Some nephron have peritubular capillaries around their tubules and some have vasa recta around their tubules. Then from peritubular capillaries and vasa recta, the blood is drained into the interlobular arteries and then into interlobular vein, then into arcuate vein, interlobar vein, renal vein, inferior vena cava, and then this blood returns to heart. So this is how the circulation of blood through the kidneys take place. So this diagram shows you how interlobular arteries give efferent arterioles and then two types of capillaries. So this artery is arcuate artery. Arcuate artery gives off the branches that are called as interlobular arteries. Then from interlobular arteries, the branches arise that are called as efferent arterioles. Then efferent arterioles further divide into a capillary network that is called as glomerulus. Then the blood from these glomerular capillaries, which is a tuft of capillary or a network of highly convoluted capillaries, the blood drains into efferent arterioles. So efferent arterioles are called as arterioles because these arterioles give a second network of capillaries. So by definition, any arteriole which is present before the capillary, it is called as arteriole, not venule. So these efferent arterioles are called as arterioles because they divide again and give a second network of capillaries that are peritubular capillaries. These capillaries surround the renal tubules. Then from these capillaries, blood is drained into the efferent it is drained into the interlobular vein, and then from interlobular vein it goes into the arcuate vein. Now, what is the difference between glomerular capillaries and peritubular capillaries? Glomerular capillaries is a network of highly convoluted capillaries which offer a lot of resistance to the flow of blood, and therefore the pressure of blood inside glomerular capillaries is very high, and that is 60 millimeter of mercury, and this pressure is higher than the pressure inside the capillaries of rest of the body. And because of high pressure of blood, plasma filters out of these capillaries as glomerular filtrate and enter into the Bowman's capsule. So this high pressure of capillaries, glomerular capillaries, is responsible for the formation of glomerular filtrate, which is the first step of urine formation. And therefore, glomerular filtrate formation is called as pressure filtration or ultrafiltration. On the other hand, the peritubular capillaries, which are surrounding the renal tubules, have very low pressure of blood. The average pressure of blood in peritubular capillaries is only 13 millimeter of mercury, and therefore these capillaries are responsible for reabsorption. Okay, all those substances which are reabsorbed by the process of tubular reabsorption through the walls of renal tubule are taken up by the peritubular capillaries, and then from because they are having very low pressure, so they will receive the substances which are being absorbed by the walls of the reabsorbed by the walls of renal tubule, so because of their very low pressure. A similar type of capillaries are also present in some nephron of kidney, and those are called as vasa recta. Vasa recta means straight vessels which are present in 20 to 25% of total nephrons, and those nephrons are called as juxtamedullary nephrons that are present deep inside the medulla. And for those juxtamedullary nephrons, the peritubular capillaries are in the form of straight vessels instead of a random network. Now we'll study about structure of nephron. You know, nephron is the functional unit of kidney, and it is actually the structure which is responsible for the formation of urine. Each kidney is having around 1 million nephrons. However, the number of nephron starts reducing after the age of 40, and after this age there is a loss of 10% nephron every 10 years. So by the age of 40 you will have whatever the number of nephron a person is having, it will be reduced by 10% by the age of 50 and 20% by the age of 60 and so on. However, despite of this reduction in the number of nephron, the kidney functions are not impaired. This is because the total number of nephrons that are present in each kidney are far more than the actually required. So there are spare nephrons, you can say. So because spare nephrons are there, so despite of a gradual reduction in the number of nephrons, the kidney functions are not significantly affected with the advancement of age. Each nephron is having uh, three main parts. And these parts are renal corpuscle, renal tubule, and a collecting system. Renal corpuscle is the first part of a nephron, which is 0.2 millimeter in diameter. It consists of a tuft or network of capillaries called as glomerulus, and this glomerulus is surrounded by a capsule shaped structure called as Bowman's capsule. The second part is renal tubule, which is roughly 50 to 55 millimeter long, and it is divided into segments depending upon their respective functions. So earliest part of renal tubule is proximal convoluted tubule, which is 14 millimeter in length and 150 to 250 micrometer in diameter. Then there is loop of Henle, which is 30 millimeter in length, and then distal convoluted tubule, which is 5 millimeter in length. Distal convoluted tubule is connected with the collecting system, which comes next to the distal convoluted tubule, and it includes collecting tubule of variable length, and then the collecting tubules, it enters into the collecting duct, which is 15 millimeter in length, and then several collecting ducts of several nephrons joined together and open into a papillary duct, which is 5 millimeter in length. Okay, this slide is describing the structure of renal corpuscle. Renal corpuscle is first part of nephron, which consists of a capillary network surrounded by a capsule-like structure. The capillary network, is called as glomerulus, which is formed by the division of afferent arterioles into capillaries. There are a total of 50 capillaries in glomerulus, and these are highly convoluted capillaries. Blood from these capillaries drains into efferent arterioles. Now, glomerulus is surrounded by a cup-shaped structure, which you can say is a distended end of renal tubule. This cup-shaped structure has two layers, an outer layer, which is called as parietal layer, and an inner layer, which is called as visceral layer. Outer layer or the parietal layer consists of a single layer of flat cells, whereas the inner layer consists of large size cells called as podocytes. These cells are called as podocytes because they are having food processes, and food processes of the podocytes are wrapped around capillaries. Between the parietal layer and visceral layer, there is a space, and this space is called as Bowman space. Bowman space is a space in which the glomerular filtrate, which is plasma filtered out of glomerular capillaries because of high pressure inside, is collected. So glomerular filtrate is received by the Bowman space, and then from here it enters into the renal tubule. Renal tubule is connected with the Bowman's capsule to a site which is called as the urinary pole. Okay, so this end of Bowman's capsule to which renal tubule is connected is called as urinary pole, whereas this side of Bowman's capsule where efferent arterioles are entering the Bowman's capsule and efferent arterioles are leaving. This is called as vascular pole. This diagram is showing you how podocytes are wrapped around the capillaries. This is a podocyte and these are foot processes of the podocyte. You can see that each foot process from podocyte is further divided into smaller processes. The large process is called as pedicel or the primary foot process, and the smaller processes are called as secondary foot processes. Now these secondary foot processes of the adjacent pedicels are interdigitated, and because of this interdigitation there is a very small or narrow gap left between the secondary foot processes through which the glomerular filtrate passes. This diagram is also showing the cross section of glomerular capillary. These capillaries are highly fenestrated capillaries. Fenestrated means they are having a large number of pores across their cells. These pores make these capillaries, as you can see in this diagram. This is the innermost layer of capillary, which is a capillary endothelial lining. Then outside the capillary endothelial lining there is the second layer which is made up of connective tissue, loose connective tissue, and it is called as basal lamina or basement membrane. And then outside the basement membrane are foot processes of the podocytes. So when the glomerular filtration takes place, plasma actually has to cross these three layers. First endothelium, which is innermost layer, then basement membrane or basal lamina, and then the filtration slits. Filtration slits are actually the gaps between the two foot processes through which glomerular filtrate can pass. And these three layers are collectively called as filtration membrane. This diagram is also showing the filtration membrane. This is capillary lumen and this is Bowman space. Now between the capillary lumen or the cavity of the capillary and Bowman space there are three layers. Okay, these layers are actually made up of the wall of capillary of which innermost is capillary endothelium, which is fenestrated, that is it is having gaps or fenestrations which are across the cells, across the endothelial cells, right? These fenestrations are or gaps are 90 nanometer in diameter. Then there is a basement membrane which is composed of a loose connective tissue, and then there are foot processes of the podocytes. Gaps between the foot processes is actually the region through which glomerular filtrate will pass. These gaps are called as filtration slits and their diameter is 40 nanometer. Now all these three layers, that is endothelial layer, basement membrane and the foot processes, they together make a membrane across which the glomerular filtration takes place. And this membrane is having a net pore size of 8 nanometer only. So anything which is smaller than 8 nanometer will be able to cross the capillary wall, whereas those things which are larger than 8 nanometer are not, will be retained within the blood and will not be filtered out, right? And here I would like to mention one more thing, that is this filtration membrane is negatively charged, and this is because that the endothelial cells are negatively charged as well as the basement membrane is negatively charged. So anything which is negatively charged will not be able to cross the filtration membrane. For example, albumin protein is having a size of 6 nanometer, that is lesser than 8 nanometer. However, this protein is negatively charged. So being negatively charged, it will not be able to cross the filtration membrane. Although its size is less than the net pore size of the filtration membrane. Okay, it is less than 8 nanometer, but because it is negatively charged, so it will retain within the blood. And we know that the albumin is the smallest protein. So it means virtually no protein, almost no protein will be able to filter out as a part of glomerular filtrate. Now we'll study about the structure of renal tubule. Renal tubule is the second part of nephron, which is connected with the renal corpuscle at urinary pole. So urinary pole marks the beginning of renal tubule. The very first segment of renal tubule is called as proximal convoluted tubule. Proximal convoluted tubule is 15 millimeter long tubule and it is lined with a ciliated simple columnar epithelium. Proximal convoluted tubule is the part of renal tubule where maximum reabsorption of glomerular filtrate takes place. Around 60%, 65% water and solutes present in the glomerular filtrate are reabsorbed from the wall of proximal convoluted tubule. And high reabsorptive capacity of this segment of renal tubule is because it is lined with an ciliated epithelium, and because of these cilia it has a huge surface area for reabsorption. Secondly, the cells are having a large number of mitochondria, which are shown here with orange color. So these cells are very much active. They can produce a lot of energy which is needed for the tubular reabsorption, which is mainly an energy dependent process. Then from renal tubule, the glomerular filtrate enters, the proximal convoluted tubule, the glomerular filtrate enters into the loop of Henle. Loop of Henle is a U-shaped structure which has two limbs. The first limb of loop of Henle is called as descending limb because here the glomerular filtrate travels in the downward direction. And the other limb is called as ascending limb. Ascending limb, the descending limb is entirely a thin limb, that is its walls are thin, whereas the descending limb is divided in two parts, lower thin ascending limb and upper thick ascending limb. The wall of lower thin ascending limb is same as that of descending limb, and that is it is lined with a simple squamous epithelium. On the other hand, the wall of thick ascending limb is lined with a simple cuboidal epithelium. Then from loop of Henle, which is around 15 to 20 millimeter in length, glomerular filtrate enters into the distal convoluted tubule. This part of renal tubule is 5 millimeter in length and from distal convoluted tubule, the reabsorption 5% of the glomerular filtrate is reabsorbed. Right? In case of loop of Henle, 15 to 20% of the glomerular filtrate is reabsorbed. Whereas here in distal convoluted tubule, 5% is reabsorbed. Distal convoluted tubule is lined with a simple cuboidal epithelium which is non-ciliated. The very first part of distal convoluted tubule passes between the efferent and efferent arteriole, and here these structure together make a specialized structure called as juxtaglomerular apparatus, which is responsible for the regulation of glomerular filtration. Then from distal convoluted tubule, glomerular filtrate enters into collecting tubules. Then these collecting tubules from different nephrons gradually join each other and they enter into a collecting duct. And then several collecting ducts join with one another and eventually open into the minor calyx. Renal tubule is the structure of nephron which is responsible for the processes called as tubular secretion and tubular reabsorption. This is the description of various parts of renal tubules. The first part of renal tubule is proximal convoluted tubule, which I have told you is 15 millimeter long tubule. Its walls are composed of single layer of cuboidal cells which have numerous microvilli and a large number of mitochondria. So this part of renal tubule is very efficient in terms of reabsorption, and it is responsible for the reabsorption of water and solutes up to 65%. Moreover, substances are also secreted by the walls of proximal convoluted tubules and are added to the glomerular filtrate. Then the next part is loop of Henle. Its walls are divided into thin segment and the thick segment. The thin segment, which is making the descending limb, and the lower half of ascending limb, is composed of flat cells which have very few mitochondria. Whereas the thick segment, which is making the upper half of the ascending limb, also called as thick ascending limb, is composed of cuboidal cells which have numerous mitochondria but no microvilli. This segment is responsible for the reabsorption of up to 25% solutes and water from glomerular filtrate. Loop of Henle then enters into the distal convoluted tubules, which is 5 millimeter long segment. Its walls are composed of cuboidal epithelium and the cells are having no villi. Here the 5% reabsorption of water and solute from the glomerular filtrate takes place. Now a little bit about the types of nephron that are present within kidneys. Each kidney is having two types of nephron. These are cortical nephrons and juxtamedullary nephrons. Cortical nephrons are more abundant nephrons that are constituting 70 to 80% of the total nephrons present in a kidney, whereas juxtamedullary nephron are 20 to 30% of the total nephrons. The difference between cortical nephron and juxtamedullary nephron is that cortical nephrons are present higher in the renal cortex, whereas juxtamedullary nephrons are present near the corticomedullary junctions. As in this diagram, you can see two types of nephrons. This nephron which is having its glomeruli present higher in the renal cortex or closer to the outer region of renal cortex is a cortical nephron. And you can see that in case of cortical nephron, the loop of Henle is short and it is not penetrating very much deep inside the renal medulla. On the other hand, the medullary nephron is having its renal corpuscle or glomeruli close to the junction of medulla and cortex. And these nephrons, also called as juxtamedullary nephrons, are having long loop of Henle which is penetrating deep inside the renal medulla. And these are in addition to these structural differences, another difference is that of capillaries which are surrounding the renal tubule. As you can see in this diagram, in case of cortical nephron, the peritubular capillaries are in the form of a random network around the renal tubules. These capillaries are running along different directions, right? So this is actually a random network of capillaries which is surrounding the renal tubules of cortical nephrons, and their glomeruli or renal corpuscles are also situated higher in the renal cortex, and there is a shorter loop of Henle. On the other hand, this is a juxtamedullary nephron where you can see the renal corpuscle is close to the junction of medulla and cortex, and the loop of Henle is deep or long, and in addition the capillaries are U-shaped. So these U-shaped capillaries or straight capillaries, there is no convolution of capillaries in this case. The capillaries are running straight and they are making U-shaped turns. So this type of capillaries, straight capillaries, are called as vasa recta. So these juxtamedullary nephron are 20 to 30% of the total nephrons. In our later lectures, we'll study how the two types of